All right, we are live and back once again this week for the Mr. Rento and Homes podcast, live on YouTube and some of our other social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram. We're not on Twitch yet. I don't know. I think that's probably going to be next. But welcome, everybody. My name is Dominic Danino, a.k.a. Mr. Rento and Homes. And in today's podcast, we're going to be talking about, is rent-to-own homes only for ugly houses? I am joined today by Giovanna Danino, local agent in Phoenix, an investor, and also investor agent in the Denver market, James Brown. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Hi.
How you guys doing?
Great.
Good. Let's go.
Okay, let's have some energy. Let's go.
Yes.
All right. Oh, Instagram is working. So Instagram, I've been having issues with the lives these days. So yeah, we're live on Instagram as well. All right. For everybody that's out there, if you have any questions as we go through the live, pop your questions in, and then we'll try to answer them as we go. So welcome. All right. So the topic of the day, right, is rent-to-own homes only for ugly houses, right? And the reason that we're talking about this is because there is a misconception out there that rent-to-own homes programs out there, and there are some out there in that other investors do, is based on the fact that they have an inventory of properties that they may buy either off market or on market, right? They may buy creatively. So they may have an inventory of 2 to 3 houses out there. And the client, our potential rent-to-own homes client, only gets an option of those. But that's not the case for our program, right? We don't carry an inventory of properties to say, hey, pick one of these 2 or 3 here, and then that's all you got, right? So that limits the amount of options for buyers. So the options that we give them is, and the beauty of our program is that they get to pick the house themselves, right? So we buy houses directly from the MLS. For all you agents out there, we buy houses directly from the MLS, move-in ready condition, right? Now, they don't have to be necessarily HGTV condition,
No.
right? But they do have to pass inspection. They do have to appraise, right? So we step in that instance, we step in as the buyer on move-in ready houses, right? So we don't have ugly houses. We're in the pretty house business, as we say. So you guys welcome to join in and add some points. James, go ahead.
Yeah. I want to say, hey, I saw Antonio Holman said hi in the chat. What's up, Antonio? He's the producer of my investing show.
Awesome. Hi, Antonio.
And then there's another comment, just says Facebook user, doesn't have a name on there. It says, I've got a beautiful 2021 newer build in Fountain, Colorado, up for sale on rent to own. So yeah, reach out. Maybe I can help you find a buyer if you haven't. So go to the link under my profile there. Oh, that goes away. Linktree /partner with James Brown and connect with me there.
Yeah, if you're on Facebook and you're in different groups, you have to allow a StreamYard and Facebook to show your username. So if you want to show your name when you're asking questions, yeah, go ahead and do that.
Yeah, cool.
All right, so let's talk about a couple of things, right? So so this individual is saying, hey, I got a beautiful 2021 newer build in Fountain, Colorado, up for sale on rent to own. So I guess my question would be is, how long have you had it for rent to own, right? And depending on that answer is, we could probably give you some marketing tips on how to find a rent to own buyer. And we have helped other people. So this is a great question. Few instances where we had a couple of flippers, home flippers that have put up their properties, and depending on the location, some of the markets have been a little bit slow, especially with rates rising, right? So, and that's the beauty of our program. It opens up the market to more people when you can get people in that don't qualify for traditional financing right now, right? So it opens up the market. So, your avatar is going to be somebody that's going to be a little bit different, right? So there are ways that you can market your property better. One is work with local lenders, right? Reach out to local lenders and say, hey, I got a rent-to-own property here that I'm looking to sell. Do you have any buyers that don't qualify for traditional financing, but they're working on getting that fixed? Right? Maybe you turned them down for whatever reason, or the bank turned them down. Do you have anybody like that? Right? And that would be a way to build a partnership with somebody like that, a lender. And then once that person is ready to qualify, then that person goes back to that lender to help that buyer get their financing. Right? Yeah. So that's a way to partner up with people and get a little bit more creative. And then build those relationships, right? We always talk about, hey, this business is about relationship building. So, yeah, team up with other people that way. Any other ideas you guys got?
Well, as far as the question and the misconception, I get the same question asked a lot. So, Giovanna, where are the houses that you guys have in the valley so I can take my potential client to take a look? And like you mentioned, we don't accumulate inventory. That's the beauty of the program. The client gets to pick the house that they want, right? Usually the house has already been identified. When a client comes to us, the house has already been identified by the client working with their agent, or they are in the decision making of which one they want to select. But they get to pick a house right off the MLS, move-in ready. So it's not an ugly house. It doesn't need to be HGV, ready to go. All the frills and bells and whistles, right? But it has to pass inspection. That's for sure.
Nope.
Yeah, and so the reason why we do it that way, right? It's because eventually, see, unlike other programs don't care whether the person eventually gets the house and gets their own financing. Our goal and our method is to get them to the finish line, right? We want them to succeed. And in order for them to succeed, that property still needs to meet traditional financing guidelines, right? As a lender myself, I see appraisals come in. I do the traditional stuff too. But if the property doesn't meet the guideline, then that's not a property that we want to be involved in, because there's going to be issues down the road. So we're going to cover the types of properties that are a good fit. We talked about, we don't carry inventory. The client gets to pick a property directly from the MLS. So for all you agents, it doesn't change your process when you're working with clients that don't meet traditional financing criteria, but they're going to be a fit for rent to own. So they're still going to be looking at traditional houses, right? And obviously they would have to get pre-qualified through our program to let you know at what price point they should be looking at or what they can afford. So that way, you're in the right price point, right? Talked about ugly versus pretty houses. Yes, there are methods out there that people do a seller finance or a seller carryback or some type of methods of inventory that houses that need repairs, right? These properties need repairs, and they're selling them as is, and you probably wouldn't pass inspection, or they would not be, what we call C4 or better condition on the appraisal by an appraiser. And so they sell them on terms, or they sell them on an installment sale, and have those individuals fix those properties up themselves. Right? Now, could a person that buys one of our properties fix up the property? So let's say the cabinets are a little bit dated, or they don't like the color of the carpet or the flooring. If somebody's qualified to do that work, we get a lot of people that are in the trades that work, they're doing cabinets, they're doing tile, they're doing countertops. They know how to do bathrooms, right? They know how to install carpet, and so forth. So if somebody's qualified to do that and they're one of our buyers and they prefer to, hey, I want to make these changes to the house, right? They want to, I don't know, make the walls pink if they want, right? So we give them the flexibility to go ahead and modify the house to their liking because they are acting as a homeowner, just like you would if you got your financing from one of the big box lenders, right? So we give them the flexibility to go ahead and do that. Other than the fact that there are certain instances where it may require permitting from the city where they're going to change the footprint on the property, add square footage, knock down walls, convert a carport to a garage. Generally on those, no, we don't allow that because again, there's a process to go through that. The city may have an issue with that. So cosmetic upgrades by all means, but if you're going to make those kind of other changes, we don't allow it. Because of some issues with the city. Now, once they get the house in their name, they get their own financing and so forth, then by all means, they can, go ahead and do anything they want, right? Because at that point in time, they're responsible for that, having to go through those processes with the city.
Yeah. And that's a good transition to talk about. So we have to buy it, and we usually are getting financing, not paying all cash for a property. So it's got to pass inspections and appraisals on the front end, but also on the back end when our rent-to-own buyers buy it. And another thing we do, we like to share the inspection report that we get up front so that rent-to-own buyer that we're working with is also fully aware of what needs to be updated or not. But everybody's on the same page. So that's another way of protecting our rent-owned buyers. So everything's above board. They see that.
Yeah, let's dive a little deeper into that, right? So as it relates to the process. So let's say the property's been identified by the potential client, right? And we make the offer on the property. So the transaction is going to be like a traditional sale. We make an offer on the property. The offer is accepted. We're going to go through that process just like if I was going to move into it, right? I'm going to order an appraisal or an inspection, right? So once that inspection comes back, then we're going to review the inspection, and assuming that everything's okay, then we move forward, right? Let's say there are issues. Some issues, as you know, as part of doing a transaction for you agents out there and you lenders, some of those may be cosmetic in nature, right? Minimal. They're not a safety issue, right? Or a structural issue. Then those are negotiated between us and the seller, right? Just the same way as if you were getting traditional financing. So if that seller agrees to fix it, then we move forward. That seller may not agree to fix it or fix some of them just the same way as a traditional transaction. And we make the decision whether to move forward or not, right? In consultation with the agent that brought us the person that doesn't qualify. So it brought us the rent-to-own buyer, right? And using our own expertise to know, hey, is this going to be an issue down the road, right? When they go get an FHA loan or a conventional loan or a VA loan, right? So we don't want to have those issues down the road because it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help them to get them to the finish line. So we're going to go through that process. We're going to negotiate with the seller, see what makes sense, what's genuinely a safety or something that's required that should be done, and then what's cosmetic. Let's say, I don't know, it could be loose handles or something along those lines, right? Something cosmetic and minor. Then again, that's negotiable. That can be fixed as part of the transaction. Can we get a handyman in there and then just have them invoice it at closing or something along those lines, right? Or do a credit to get those things repaired, and then we just kind of send our own handyman out there to say, hey, the seller gave us a credit. We're just going to pay the handyman to get it fixed, resolved, and then by the time the the rent-to-own buyer gets into the house and it's all fixed, right? So that's the same way that a traditional sale would work, right? So it doesn't change that aspect, but we're covering that basis. And then, like you mentioned, we share that with the rent-to-own buyer. We share that with the agent as well, right? Because we're all tied at the hip in that sense that, hey, we're all aligned. And so what's best for the client, what's best for us also as the person or the individuals that stepping in as the buyer, right? We're the ones that are taking the risk in the purchase. So we want collateral that's gonna be acceptable. So anything else you guys want to add?
No,
those are some excellent points that you brought up. Obviously, minor repairs, they're easy fixes, but obviously anything major, we wouldn't want to take that risk of making an offer on a property for ourselves or for our future, clients. So we protect them just like we protect ourselves.
Yep. Dominic, should I talk about that rural property?
Yeah. So good segue there, right? So let's talk about the types of properties that generally are acceptable, right?
Yep.
So for our market, we're looking for mainly, I'm not gonna say never, but mainly in major metros, right? Major metros that have comps, right? Because it just goes the same way, that have comps. They're going to be able to appraise, that are going to meet city and city and county coding. Mainly single family dwelling houses, right? We don't do condos. We don't currently do condos. We don't do mobile homes, right? Rural areas are going to be on a case-by-case basis, depending on, hey, can we get financing? Can we get exit financing on those, right? Because that's going to be an issue. Condos or HOAs that are going to have an issue with potentially having a tenant, right? And generally condos, we don't do condos because of the investor concentration issue, right? From a conforming and FHA lending criteria is FHA and Fannie don't want to lend in certain projects, certain condominium associations, because too many of the units are investor owned, right? So, and the issue that comes up with that is, let's say a condominium project, let's say 60% of the properties are investor owned with rentals and only 40% are owner occupants. Well, those are not going to meet Fannie Mae criteria. Those may not meet FHA criteria because there are issues that came up during the last financial crisis, right? When there was a high investor concentration in condos. We saw a lot of that in Florida, where 80% were second homes or investment properties. And as you all may know, HOAs kind of pooled the HOA fee to pay for maybe utilities, insurance, maintenance of the pool and the yard and the landscaping, maintenance of the elevators or the building itself. So if in an instance where there's 70% investors own units and only 30% owner occupants, then during the financial crisis, those investors let those properties go. They stopped making the payments, right? Those houses went back to the banks. So who's paying for the HOA fees? Only 30% of the owner occupants. Well, clearly, if only 30% of the owner occupants are contributing to the HOA budget, then there's going to be a shortage. That's going to be a problem. And some of the things aren't going to be able to be maintained, right? And good luck for those HOA association management companies trying to get a hold of the lender, say, hey, you own this property now, you got to be paying the HOA, right? Good luck with that, especially during those times when banks were taking back so much property or properties were in the middle of foreclosures. Depending on the location, some foreclosures took years to take place. So in reality, the lender didn't own the property yet. It was still the old owner that just vacated and left the property and left it as is, right? So those are issues that come up, but people don't realize these things. But obviously, haven't been through that cycle and being aware of those things. This is what keeps us from kind of not going down that road. Could we make an exception? Potentially, right? We'd have to do a little bit more digging on the project and so forth, and then it would probably require a little bit more skin in the game from the tenant buyer. If they really want it, then I guess just like anything else, it's going to take a little bit more commitment on their part, right? So that's the reason why we generally don't do condos, HOAs. Mobile homes are another thing, right? So mobile homes generally don't increase in value because they're not viewed the way as on-site built properties. So, and then getting financing for mobile homes is a lot tougher than a single-family dwelling.
Yeah, both for us and for the buyer in the end.
Yep, both ends, right? Both ends. Investor mobile home thing, it's really not a thing. And then also getting financing on the exit as well, right? There's criteria. It must be 1979 or newer, and so you got all these things that come along with that. That makes it tougher financing. There's less and less lenders that will finance mobile homes because of those reasons, right? Yeah. So, but you talked about the rural properties, right? So I tend to shy away from rural properties. That's going to be the exception. But talk about your specific situation that you did do a rural property for on the rent-to-own homes.
Yeah, and let me just kind of be clear. So, like, the reasons that we want metro areas, median price range, move-in ready, safe neighborhoods, is that if we get it back, we want to have something that we can turn around and sell to another rent-to-own buyer or an end buyer that can just get financing or rent it. So that's the thinking behind it. But like Dominic said, we could be flexible. So I just wanted to talk about a deal that we did here in Colorado. Somebody wanted to move from the metro area here to a rural area in the San Luis Valley. And there were a lot of challenges with it. We got it done. They ended up buying the home, but it was livable. It hadn't been lived in for a while. So there were some issues that had to be fixed before we were able to let our buyer move into it. We handled that, but there's the other challenges. And the reason I wanted to talk about rural is, like, it had a septic system. It had power was, propane and a wood stove. There were two parcels of properties that should have been merged. We had to have separate contracts on those. The appraiser was very expensive. Somebody had to pay for that. So some of these things were kind of shared with us and the buyer. The appraisal took a lot longer. There's a lot of challenges, and that's the reason, why we avoid that. But we did it and, got it done and got some people into the home, and they're super happy. So they're close to family now and out of the city, which they were tired of. So it was a good success story, but definitely a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. Right. So you brought up a few points, right? Rural properties, right? They may not have public utilities tied into. You need, you may have a water well. It may not be electric, or, there are some places where you need to have the water ported in.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. This doesn't have a water line, right? It's not direct connected. You talked about the septic tank.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's an issue. It has to get inspected. Right. So it may be working. Yes, it may be working today, but it may not be working well in 2 years.
Yep.
Right?
Totally.
And now there's money to be in that requires to be put into it. So there are challenges with rural properties.
Yeah.
That most people don't realize. Right. I always say, how bad do you want it? If you want it that bad, then
Right.
Show me that you want it that bad. And basically it comes out to, hey, show me the money. How much are you willing to put into it? Right. If you want it that bad, just like anything else, then show us, and then we'll consider it. But if that's not the case, then no, it just doesn't make sense for all of us, right? We try to protect all of us, not just ourselves, but the client as well. I mean, we're trying to keep them out of trouble, right? So why complicate things when it's not necessary, right? There's plenty of other options to do, right? Now, if somebody's totally stuck on one thing, then again, this goes back to, hey, no, well, you're gonna have to commit a lot more into the transaction than the minimum.
That brings up a good point. So this was a riskier thing for us. So the buyer paid up front 15% of the purchase price. That goes to us and we hold that, so owed to them in the future. But that was kind of some insurance for us because they had some skin in the game. The other challenging thing about this, they were kind of in a price range that was median or under. And when you go rural, like we had to deal with, most of the homes that were in their price range were modular, mobile homes, or some combination, maybe it was mobile and it had been purged, which means it's anchored to the ground. And getting financing on those is difficult. So we actually were working with an investor on that one that is also a lender like you are, Dominic. And she's like, too many red flags, don't want to do modular or mobile homes. So she's like, I'm out. So we ended up with an investor that bought it with a conventional loan. But it was a frame construction, stick-built house that we ended up with. So that original investor would have been fine with that, but she's just like, and then she had to go put money somewhere else. But we're getting in the weeds here, but I just wanted to bring that up, that finding lending on those types of properties is difficult again. So.
Yeah, finding comps, and then and you have rural areas where like you may have a house that's 2 acres next to one that's got 40 acres, right? And then the 40 acre has some agricultural business, and then getting an appraiser out there too. Timelines, right? So it's not like the appraisers are living out there, right? As you would in the general metro. So you're getting an appraiser out there, and then appraiser charge more. It's like, hey, I got to go 2 hours out there, and now it's not, I don't know, $700 or $750. Now it's $1,200 to do an appraisal out there. So so
more than that.
Challenge with it. So it gets expensive, right? So. So those are a couple of examples as it relates to rural properties and the types of properties that are a fit for us. We want properties in the general, major metros, single family dwellings, detached. Could we do townhouses potentially, depending on the HOA and the PUD structure? But generally, no condos, no mobile homes. You don't do land on its own, again, because of the same issues. So, anything you want to add, Giovanna?
Yeah. What about a new build?
Great question.
Yes.
Great segue. Yeah. So new builds, new construction, right? So can we do new construction in a rent-to-own home?
Heck
Absolutely. Yeah. But there's always a but, right? It's a criteria with that, right? There's always a but. What for us, do a new build rent to own, it has to be a spec home, right? So they say, hey, if somebody comes on and say, hey, I want a new build, but they haven't even broke ground yet, and it's going to be built 9 months out.
Yeah, that wouldn't work.
It has to be something that we can close on. Yeah, it has to be something that we can close on within 30 to 45 days, right? We're not sitting tied up on a property for 6 to 9 months or anything longer than 45 days. We're not doing. It has to be a spec home or something. Hey, it's all done. They just gotta, I don't know, finish the details on it, and we can close within 30 days or 45 days. Okay, potential. 2, the builder has to be okay with selling to an investor, because there are builders out there that will not sell to investors. And some of that came from the financial crisis as well, right? We talked about all the issues that came up during the financial crisis. I don't know, for some of you that were around or saw, there were subdivisions out there that were built out, or some houses were being built and then halfway through they didn't get finished, or some subdivisions had a lot of investors in them, right? Because people were speculating back in 2005, 6, 7, right? They're speculating, saying, hey, I'll buy this new build that hasn't even broke ground, and by the time it's built in 9 months, I'm just going to flip it and sell it because houses prices are going up and up and up and up. I'm not even intending to live in it. They were hoping for the flip on the appreciation over the period of time that the construction took place. That happened a lot. Well, when the economy turned and valuations and prices started coming down, what do you think happened with those investor houses? They let them go, right?
Yep.
He let them go. And so the same thing that happened with the condos, these subdivisions had a lot of investors in them and only a few owner occupants. Well, these subdivisions also had, right, they were part of a PUD or an HOA, and somebody's got to pay for that. The pool cleaning, maintaining of the yards, right? The clubhouse, all this stuff, right? So who's paying for it? The 2 or 3 people that were left over that were living in them when 80% of the investors just walked away, right? That's a problem, right? So builders learned their lesson from that fiasco, and that's why they shy away from selling to investors, right? Because they don't want to run into that issue. So there are builders out there that will not sell to investors, and there are some that may, depending on the situation. Giovanna, you talked about one, right, that you talked to recently.
Yeah, actually, it just seems they all have their own criteria that needs to be met in regards to investors buying. This particular new build company actually wanted to have one investor offer at a time. So submit the offer, work through that offer, close that deal before they accepted another investor buying in that community. So, and some are more strict, some don't care. It depends.
I've got another.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I've gotten multiple calls from people that were planning on buying a new construction home, even picked out finishes, and then something happened on the lending side, right?
Yeah.
Happens. They go do something stupid, like they buy a car and they got a car payment out. Oh no, we can't buy the house. Whatever reason, that's where we could possibly step in and buy that home and give them the time to get their financing figured out. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, a lot of great points, right? So there's a couple of that overlapping points. One, if somebody buys the new build and they put in a deposit basically put a deposit on a lot, right? The lot, and then they break ground and they're building it, and it takes 9 months. Well, what happens with people? People end up doing stuff, right? They may jack up their credit, incur new debt, take out new car loans. Heck, in those 9 months, they could end up getting divorced, right? Yeah. And now that whole transaction just blows up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But those individuals have put money at risk because builders want a deposit. They're going to collect money. They're not going to break ground. They're not going to secure the cul-de-sac lot, for you for free. They're going to want money, right? So there's money at risk. So that's why we don't step into those transactions that way. Now, in the instance that you said, hey, I had put in money, or you're an agent and your client had put in money, have put in the additional money for do the upgrades and the lot, and then now during the 9-month period, something happened that kept them from qualifying through the builder's lender. And that's another thing. Builders want to use their own in-house lenders, right? So they can be very picky, right? If their in-house lender only offers ABC programs and you happen to be somebody that's not an ABC kind of person, employee, you may not qualify. What do? They just say, basically go away. I mean, they don't like working with outside lenders. Right? They typically want it to keep it in-house, right? And there's a reason for that. We won't get into that. But during that period of time, something happens, and now that in-house lender says, you don't qualify anymore. We're turning that because you took out a new car loan, or you're dead, or you forgot to pay the phone bill, or something happened. And now that buyer and that agent that brought that buyer are out of luck. Right now, they got to go find somebody else to step in as the lender potentially. Maybe that builder doesn't allow it. Well, they should allow it because somebody put in the deposit, and the builder's lender is the one that's saying no. So, you as an agent or a buyer in that situation should tell the lender, say, "Hey, I'm going to get my own financing outside because you're not. It's not. No, you're turning them down. What if I can get financing? Right? You're still going to complete the process. You're going to sell your property. You're still going to make your money on selling the new build. So allow me to go find somebody else to either finance me or help me get into this house, right?" And as you brought up, potentially, could we be the solution for that? Yes, because that person may not qualify, right? But we can qualify, right? And we can step in as the buyer in that transaction and help that person get into the home, right? So yes, great points. And then we don't realize how often this stuff happens, but it happens a lot. Right? It's not as cookie cutter as, hey, I'm going to Circle K, get me a big gulp or whatever, and then that's that. Right? These processes take time and things are moving. Just because you sign a contract to open escrow doesn't mean everything's done. Stuff happens along the way that creates an issue that keeps the transaction from closing.
Yep.
Sure. Yep.
All right. So we talked about types of properties that are eligible, properties on the MLS, ugly versus pretty houses, right? Move-in ready properties, and then the flexibility for us to be able to modify specific to your situation, the property, what you want. Obviously, there's got to be a give and take. Based on the risk of the transaction, based on your overall profile as a buyer or your client's profile as a buyer, if you're an agent that has somebody, and then how much skin in the game they're going to put in, right? More skin in the game, the more likely that we may be more flexible or more likely to take a little bit more of a chance on somebody, right? It's just commitment, just like anything else. The more committed you are, the more you're showing us that you're willing to go ahead and kind of go along with us, so that way we can get you to the finish line and follow our process to complete the transaction and get you to the point where you want to be, right? Because in reality, is we're giving people something that they can't have right now, right? And that is so valuable, not just for lenders and agents, but for clients that have been told no.
Yep.
Any closing thoughts?
I think we covered it.
No, I mean, go ahead, James.
That's it. Go.
Yeah, I think one thing to keep in mind is for us and any agents that are currently working or have worked or can potentially work with in the future, and are not 100% sure whether rent to own could be a fit for their client, it just requires a phone call. We cannot generalize specific situations for everyone. Our conversations here are pretty much, for sake of argument. However, I keep telling all the agents that I speak with, please don't hesitate to give me a call. Let's go ahead and get our heads together and discuss the specific challenge of your client, and let's see how we can go ahead and move forward and be able to provide some assistance. So don't be shy. Reach out to James in Colorado or me here in Phoenix, and let's talk about how we can go ahead and help a potential client that can be a great fit for rent to own.
Definitely. And, we like to kind of brainstorm. We're problem solvers, as they say. We're looking for creative ways to come up with a solution, right? So, and that's what it's going to take in this market for agents and lenders to kind of not just survive, but thrive. You have to think a little bit different. You have to think outside the box, and be open to new ideas, right? That's what it's going to require. So before we go, Giovanna, can you give your information for anybody who wants to get a hold of you?
Sure, absolutely. My information is right here down below. Giovanna Buys Houses, or my phone number is 520-222-6542. Hablo Español. So if you have anyone who's bilingual or anyone who speaks Spanish, here we are to help out.
Excellent. James, want to give your info?
Yeah, if you can't see it on the screen, it's Linktree, partnerwithjamesbrown.com. So linktr.ee/partner with James Brown.
Yeah, and then real quick, just because Giovanna's in Arizona and James is in Colorado doesn't mean that we don't do this in other states as well.
True.
Right?
Yep.
We're in 12 states now. So if you're in a market where we're not in, and potentially if you're gonna bring us potential a lot of clients in there, we could kind of step up our efforts to deploy our program in your market also, right? So
yep.
we're looking for boots on the ground. We're looking for motivated agents and lenders in different markets that have the ability to bring more clients to us. And then we can kind of put a plan together to kind of roll out our program in your market as well. So, so if you're in a market that we're currently not in, reach out. We'll talk about that process and how we can work together. And last but not least, my contact info. I'm on IG at Mr. Rent to Own Homes. I'm on TikTok as Mr. Rent to Own Homes, and on YouTube as Mr. Rent to Own Homes. So until next time, thank you all for being here. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See ya.